Hello, friends, and welcome back to Stories About Entitled People. Let's start our video with a story about a woman who found herself in a tense situation on an international flight, only to have it turn around in an unexpected and rather delightful way. But before we dive in, make sure to hit that subscribe button, smash the like if you enjoy the content, and ring that notification bell so you never miss a juicy story. We want an upgrade. All of the airline posts reminds me of one when I flew internationally once a month. I flew a New York-London route frequently, and as such knew exactly what seat I wanted every flight. It's in the back, a bulkhead window seat. Because the exit was there, it meant I could have the quiet of a window, but still get up and pee without waking fellow passengers. This was a summer flight, and the plane was quite warm when we boarded. BA's not known for running a lot of AC on their planes, and I was dressed in layers, so I really wasn't worried about the temperature. What worried me as I headed back was my future seatmates. I'd seen them about the airport already, and they had caused a scene at the tea shop at another store already, so I was wary as I took my seat. There was a huge contingent of them, about 8 men, 20 women, and children. Everything was fine at first. We said hello, and I settled in, earphones on, reading material present, blanket and pillow at the ready. They'd not taken their seats yet and were standing about in the aisle, generally getting in the way of everyone trying to board. As more people loaded, the plane became warmer and warmer. I finally had enough and took off my cardigan to pare down to my sleeveless top. Note that since I was on business, this was a nice top, not low cut, not a tank top, just an average sleeveless shirt. My seatmates went ballistic. One of them yanked out my headphones and demanded I put my cardigan back on. I was insulting him and every man there. When I politely refused and said I was too hot, he immediately called me a whore. He threw a blanket over me and demanded I change seats with another woman in the back who knew how to behave. This, incidentally, would have placed me on the last row with their wives and children. I said no and pushed my flight attendant button. The flight attendant appeared, and as she was also female, she was called a whore too. This did not go down well, and she called for backup. Cue the largest male flight attendant I've ever seen make his way down the aisle. He would have given The Rock a run for his money. My seatmates demanded to be upgraded to first, where there are less of these awful women. The flight attendant said they could pay to be upgraded, but they wanted it for free because I was undressed. They went on and would occasionally turn to gesticulate to me and smack me in the process. After the second smack, I cried out, "Ow," or some such, and the nearest one pushed me back down in my seat. The flight attendant then asked me to move to the galley as this was getting dangerous. He told them to sit down, and he picked up my cardigan from the floor and came to speak to me. He asked what belongings I had and said he would get them. He then followed me to first class where I was reseated. I had a lovely flight home and sat next to a very nice Iranian man who lamented the behavior from the back. I learned a lot about Iran on that flight. I'm probably on some list somewhere for that comment. I heard choosy beggars didn't get their dinner choice either. I love that you were moved to first class, but why weren't they removed from the plane and arrested? And our second story. Customer weirdly hostile to cashier. This woman came in last night while I was training a new employee, and right off the bat it was clear she didn't like me. She and coworker were both Native American, and I'm not. I don't know if that had anything to do with why she hated me on site, but immediately acted like she was BFFs with coworker. But that was the only reason I could think of to explain it. Neither coworker or I had ever met her before that night. She was short and curt when I said the usual hello, but she was very bubbly and friendly with my coworker. She had loudly asked how much of a pack of X-brand smokes cost while I was helping a customer before her, so coworker grabbed the smokes for me to scan when I was done. When I rang up the cigs and told her the total, she just went, "Huh? What?" She hadn't been paying attention, so I told her that X type of X brand is so-and-so amount. "Oh, okay." She immediately pulled out a 10, so I had to stop her and gesture to her case of beer, ask if she was paying for that separately. The woman just scoffed and put it down angrily, going as saying how she's paying for them together in that, "What are you, an idiot?" tone that all retail workers are familiar with. I'm biting my tongue and just thinking, in what world does a 12-pack of beer and cigs come up to under $10? Plus, when would I have scanned it? She had it cradled in her arms the entire time. Then she looked to the kid I was training, telling him that since I was so slow, he should take over, while laughing like it's a funny joke. Neither me or coworker laughed. Then once her attention was on me, I gave her the new total. She had this awful scowl and demanded a lighter. The lighter rack was right by her hand on the counter. She demanded the price of a lighter, even though the price tags were right in front of her. I gave her the price range anyway. She didn't like that answer and demanded the cheapest. Didn't even let me answer before she grabbed one and threw it on the counter. During that time, I'd grabbed a can of beer the customer before her had decided against buying and left it on the counter, handed it to coworker, asking him to put it back on the shelf. Woman exploded, "That's not mine," as if I was ringing it up. "I know it's not yours, ma'am. That's why I asked coworker to put it back on the shelf." But that went in one ear and out the other for her, since she angrily reiterated that she's not paying for that since she didn't ask for it. Again, I tell her this had nothing to do with her purchases and wasn't being rung up. She scoffs and says she's not paying for someone else's beer. I ignore it and force the topic elsewhere by giving her the final total for her 3 things. It's like over 20, and she accuses me of ringing it up wrong because it's too expensive. So I read off what's being rung up and how much each item was. Beer and smokes aren't cheap. Sorry to break it to you. She paid, made some loud comments to coworker about how our boss needs to hire people who know how to work checkout, and left. All throughout it, she would ignore me for periods to chat with coworker, telling him jokes or other small talk things, and then get angry when she talked to me. It was weird AF to me. She tried to steal the beer, got caught, was embarrassed at being correctly identified for the trash she is, and lashed out at you. All you can do is laugh at how pathetic she is. It still sucks. I'm sorry you had to deal with it. And our next story. No work-related errands at lunchtime? Okay. From time to time, we have immediate needs for random items in the office. So when that happens, I make a quick run to get the needed item while I'm already out at lunch. This is not in my job description, nor anyone else's. Someone at corporate orders regular office supplies, and that covers most of our daily needs. I've been working here for years and just took it upon myself to fill special orders since I'm the only person in our office location with a company credit card. Just trying to be helpful, right? I had to special order some paper, which required me to go to the office supply store. It took about an hour. Like I said, I'd been doing this for years with no issue, and my efforts had always been appreciated, so I didn't think anything of it. When I returned to the office, I was called in to explain my long lunch to my boss. I told him where I was and showed him the receipt for the paper, but to my surprise, he was still upset. He said all office supplies have to be ordered through corporate. He also said I could no longer use the company card without his okay. When my coworkers sent me requests, I just told them they needed to contact corporate. Because many of these requests were specific to our department, I was the only one who really knew what was needed. So of course the orders got screwed up and often took a week or more when they were needed the same or next day. People making twice my salary have been tied up with supply orders, and certain projects have been put on hold until special order materials arrive. Sometimes the items we've gotten are not what we requested, so that caused even more delays. My coworkers are getting frustrated and angry. I could easily resolve these issues, but I've been told to stand down, so that's what I'm doing. I'm anticipating my boss will want to undo his new rule as the outcry gets louder, but it's really not my job. I was just doing it as a favor. I'm sure the experts at corporate can figure it out. They just need to schedule an hour or two each week for OP to run out and fill immediate orders. Then he gets paid for something he was doing for free, and everyone's happy. And our next story. Neighbor trying to take property. I recently bought a piece of lakefront property, a real gem I'd been eyeing for a while. The price was good, but the land was completely undeveloped, which I saw as an opportunity. Before closing the deal, I took all the necessary precautions. I got a survey done, a geotechnical analysis, and a perk test, since the property would need a septic system. I even talked with the county's land development department to ensure there were no issues with building a house on the land. The survey, however, revealed a problem. My neighbor had extended their fence and placed structures like sheds 17 feet into my property. Considering my property's 100 feet wide, that meant they were encroaching on almost a fifth of my lot. I decided not to proceed with the purchase until this issue was resolved. The sellers promised to handle it and sent a certified letter along with the survey to the neighbor. Soon enough, the fence was taken down and I proceeded to close the deal. After closing, I had the property cleared and put up a boundary fence to avoid any future disputes. But this didn't sit well with the neighbor. When the fence installers arrived, the neighbor tried to prevent them from putting up the fence, despite the survey and clear property markers, some of which the neighbor had pulled up. It took some effort, but we finally got the fence installed. Then the neighbor escalated things by getting the Department of Environmental Protection, DEP, involved, trying to get my property designated as a wetland. If successful, this would drastically reduce the property's value and make building very difficult. The absurdity of considering infill residential lots surrounded by houses and the lake as wetlands was beyond me. It felt like the neighbor was weaponizing the government against me to reclaim the land they had encroached on. At this point, I realized it was time to lawyer up. I hired an attorney experienced in property disputes. We collected all the evidence, including the survey, photographs of the property, and documentation of the neighbor's actions. My lawyer filed a complaint against the neighbor for trespassing and property damage and sought an injunction to prevent further interference. During the legal proceedings, it became clear that the neighbor had no legitimate claim to my land. The DEP investigation into the wetland designation was dismissed as unfounded, thanks to the evidence we provided about the property's prior status and use. The court ruled in my favor, ordering the neighbor to cease all interference and compensate me for the legal costs and damages caused by their action. And our last story. Won't take care of your cows? We will then. This is a story my father used to tell about a point of time in his childhood in the burbs of Sydney, Australia. His family lived in a somewhat rural, at that time, area, and they had a vegetable garden. It was the 30s and times were tough. They occasionally would find that their vegetable patch had been plundered and deduce that it was a cow owned by a neighbor. This neighbor would let the cow roam and forage where it wanted, and it would toddle home morning and evening to be milked. My grandfather spoke with the cow's owner in order to put a stop to this veggie theft, but the owner never did. He just said that my cow will go where she wants. In order to counter this, my grandfather hatched a plan. They kept an eye open early, and when they would find the cow in their garden, they'd tie it up and milk it dry. The cow certainly didn't mind, and my father and his family had fresh milk. Then they'd turn the cow loose. After a few occurrences of this, the neighbor took time to investigate and came calling asking about the stolen milk. They simply responded that this was payment for the vegetables. The neighbor quickly changed his approach to free-range farming, and the theft on both sides stopped. I'm reminded of the John Mulaney stand-up where he talks about the phrase, "Why buy the cow when you can get the milk for free?" and says that isn't even a real situation. Well, apparently it is. Hey guys, thank you all for watching the video. I'll see you in the next one.